What if I told you ancient Roman women used to cover themselves in the sweat and grime from the bodies of gladiators? They claimed it was some miraculous skincare treatment. Or the one about the twin brothers that were struck and killed by the same taxi driver, carrying the same passenger in the same location 2 years apart. Here's another 20 random, slightly useless facts. Let's go. In 1962, a chilling mystery unfolded in Czechoslovakia when 16 people died after swimming in the same public pool. People had been using the pool for years without issue. The only thing that changed is that the pool had recently been shortened. This left a shallow end where the water became warm and stagnant. And the only problem with warm and stagnant water is that deadly brain-eating amoebas love it. And what came next is as expected. The victims inhaled the water, allowing the amoeba to travel up the nasal passages and straight into the brain. And if the name's anything to go by, that would be the last place you'd want a deadly brain-eating amoeba. It's not often you step outside and find meat raining down from the sky. But in Bath County, Kentucky, in 1876, that's exactly what happened. On a perfectly clear afternoon, chunks of raw meat began falling over a field, turning what would normally be a peaceful countryside scene into something worthy of the next installment of Saw. And I'm talking big chunks. Think a juicy big rump steak straight from sky to plate. Scientists analysed samples and found it was most likely lung tissue, possibly from a horse, possibly a human. There was no blood, no bones, and to this day, the Kentucky meat shower remains one of the strangest and unsettling weather events in history. Ancient Roman beauty wasn't exactly pretty. At least not when it came to how the products were made. One of the most coveted skincare treatments of the time involved collecting the sweat, oil, and dirt from gladiators' bodies after battle. These warriors embodied strength, masculinity, and raw vitality, and it was believed their bodily grime carried those very same qualities. Using curved metal tools called strigils, scrapers gathered the mixture and sold it in small jars to wealthy Roman women. I guess it's like a sort of ancient next-level mud bath. In 1954, a man arrived at Tokyo Airport with a passport from a country called Taured, a nation you won't find on any map or spinning globe because it simply doesn't exist. His passport looked completely legitimate, worn from use, filled with entry and exit stamps from places like Japan, and listing Taured as a real country located between France and Spain. Airport officials placed him under guard in a hotel room, but by the morning, he'd vanished without a trace. Some claimed he was from a parallel universe, having slipped through a crack between realities. But they also think tinfoil hats act as protection from mind control. So yeah, you decide. Being a cellar master isn't generally considered a high-risk job, unless you're living in the 17th century. In the early days of champagne, bottles were notoriously unstable. Without pressure-resistant glass, the built-up carbon dioxide from fermentation caused bottles to explode without warning, often triggering chain reactions that turned wine cellars into bottle-shattering war zones. It was so dangerous that cellar masters wore iron masks and heavy gloves to protect themselves from what people had nicknamed the devil's wine. So bears going into hibernation isn't a new thing. But what about humans? Turns out we might be capable of it too. In a mysterious case, a Japanese hiker survived 24 days in a mountain forest with no food or water after falling and breaking his pelvis. Immobilized and unconscious, his body entered a state doctors believed mimicked hibernation. He was found with a core temperature of just 22 degrees Celsius, a level usually considered fatal. Against all odds, he survived and is believed to be the first documented case of human hibernation. In 18th century England, accessories were both fashionable and functional. Women of status wore decorative locket-like pendants around their necks, but instead of holding perfume, these ornate containers carried live, blood-sucking leeches, sometimes up to a dozen of them. Medical beliefs of the time favoured bloodletting, the practice of intentionally draining a patient's blood to treat or prevent illness. They'd apply the leeches directly to the skin to rebalance the blood. It was thought to cure everything from headaches to fevers and inflammation, but in reality, it really wasn't all that effective. The next time you're chowing down on one of those juicy, delicious kiwi fruits, don't be so quick to chuck out the skin. Sure, it might look a little hairy and unappetizing, but studies show that eating kiwis whole, skin and all, packs a serious health punch. There's fiber, antioxidants, vitamin C, and all the stuff you'd expect from one of those cheesy skincare commercials. Just probably don't eat a whole kiwi fruit in public. You'll very likely be arrested. The person that said airline food was rubbish clearly never met the guy who managed to score a year's worth for free. Well, I suppose not technically airline food, but in 2013, a man in China bought a fully refundable first-class ticket with no intention of flying. He just wanted to access the airport lounge's gourmet buffet. For almost a year, he showed up daily, dined like royalty, and just before the refund deadline, cancelled his ticket. He repeated the hack around 300 times over the course of the year, until airline staff finally caught on. He walked away with a full refund to go along with his lifetime ban. In 1975, a man was struck and killed by a taxi in Bermuda. But the crazy part isn't just the accident. It's the fact that 1 year earlier, in the exact same spot, his twin brother was also killed by the same taxi, driven by the same driver, and even carrying the same passenger. It doesn't need to be said, but the odds of this happening are beyond comprehension. Coincidences don't get much creepier. Winning the jackpot is about as rare as being struck by lightning. But not for one Australian man in 2007. While he was playing the slot machines at his local pub, he was literally struck by lightning indoors. At the exact same moment, the machine hit the jackpot. The shock sent him into cardiac arrest, but amazingly, he survived. So what do you do when you get struck by lightning at the same time you win the jackpot? It's pretty obvious. You go back and try win some more. And he did just that, returning to the very same machine the following week, only to hit the jackpot again. Lightning may not strike twice, but apparently jackpots do. Some West African populations carry traces of ghost DNA, genetic material inherited from an unknown ancient human lineage that doesn't match anything scientists have found in fossils or recorded in human history. This suggests that at some point our ancestors mated with a now extinct population we know absolutely nothing about. It's a missing chapter in the story of human evolution, one that appears to be lost forever. Chickens aren't really known for flying, but one bird gave it their all to defy the odds. The longest ever chicken flight lasted 13 seconds and covered just over 91 metres, roughly the length of a football field. The details are a bit murky, but the record has apparently stood unchallenged since the 1980s. I guess they gave up flying and decided to try their hand at crossing roads instead. It's official. They've been lying to us. You don't actually need wings to fly. Just have a look at spiders. Through a surprisingly clever process called ballooning, certain spiders can launch themselves into the air using nothing but silk and atmospheric electricity. They sense the Earth's electric field using tiny sensitive hairs on their legs called trichobothria. I know that was completely wrong, but stay with me. When the conditions are just right, usually before a storm, they climb to the highest point, raise their abdomen, and pump out that silk. And it's not just a temporary liftoff. They've been found floating hundreds of miles out to sea and over 13,000 feet in the air. For context, that's about as high as a small aircraft. If someone gives you the cold shoulder, don't be so quick to think it's intentional. It might just be their biological makeup. The average human body temperature has steadily declined since the 19th century, dropping from 37 degrees Celsius to 36.4, a decrease of about 0.6 degrees. About 1 degree Fahrenheit for all those Fahrenheiters out there. The experts tell us it's all thanks to improved hygiene, modern medicine, and fewer chronic infections. So if they ask you to chill out, just tell them you already have. Victorian women were obsessed with tiny waists, and in their quest to constrict themselves to the size of a used tube of toothpaste, they took their corset game into the bedroom. That's right, waist training, seen as essential to beauty, was brutal. Night corsets, also called sleep corsets, were worn to train their waists while they slept. Sure, they were often made from softer fabric and didn't have the heavy boning of those regular daytime corsets, but trying to sleep with something resembling a boa constrictor tied around your waist could very well give you nightmares. What do you call the last known individual of a species, the final living piece of an entire lineage? That would be an Endling. The word first appeared in the scientific journal Nature in 1996. Once the Endling dies, the species is gone forever. It slips into extinction, never to be seen again. There's a lake in northern Tanzania so corrosive it can turn living creatures into stone. Lake Natron. Its waters can reach a pH of 10.5, making it one of the most alkaline environments on the planet. The lake is packed with sodium carbonate and other minerals once used by ancient Egyptians to preserve their dead. When birds and animals fall in, they become so thoroughly calcified, their bodies are preserved in lifelike detail, like eerie natural statues. Governments and taxes go hand in hand, so it's no surprise that in 18th century England, households were taxed on the number of doors their houses had. The intent was to tax wealthier citizens living in larger homes, but it backfired in a pretty big way. To avoid the tax, many people, especially in crowded working class areas, bricked up their doors. This reduced airflow and ventilation and was a significant contributor to outbreaks of disease. Public health suffered, but hey, I'm sure the government didn't mind. At least they made money. Most people don't just read with their eyes, they hear the words in their heads. This mental narration is called subvocalization, and it's a natural part of how all of us process language. When you're reading, your brain sends signals to the speech muscles, causing subtle, almost imperceptible movements. These tiny muscle twitches in your voice and tongue mirror the act of speaking, even though no sound is made. So don't worry, you're not crazy. That voice in your head has a name and a purpose. And there we go, from the lake that turns living things into statues, to people wearing live leech necklaces for fashion. Can't say I didn't warn you, the facts would be slightly useless. But if you want more, here they are. And if you've got any random facts of your own, hey, I'm all ears. There'll be another video next week, so don't forget to subscribe. But until then, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.